Welcome to Melt. I'm Suresh Venkat. We are talking media and AdEx today as we deep dive into the GroupM this year, next year or TYNY report for 2024. Here are the top headlines. In India, overall ad revenue is expected to reach 1.55 lakh crore rupees in 2024 with an incremental 14,000 crore rupees as compared to 2023. And that means at a growth of 10.2%, India will be the fastest growing media market in the world. To know more, we are in conversation with Ashwin Padmanabhan, President, Investments, Trading and Partnerships at GroupM India and MA Parthasarathy, better known as MAPS, who is the Chief Strategy Officer of GroupM South Asia. So what do the numbers mean for the marketer, the media maven and the agency? What's fueling the growth of digital? Will 2024 be the catalyst year for connected TVs? And last but not the least, what's the role of AI in all of this? Let's find out as we get ready to melt with Maps and Ashwin of GroupM. Ashwin and Maps, welcome to Melt. From what I hear, Ashwin is the numbers guy, Maps, you're the trends guy. So we have both questions about the trends and the numbers. So let's start with the first question, a statement from your report. Ashwin, you said despite facing macroeconomic challenges, I imagine this includes wars and recessions, all of that, we remain optimistic about the industry. What's the reason for this optimism?
I think it's coming on the back of how 23 really panned out. If you look at starting 20, every year has been an year of ups and downs. There is one quarter which is phenomenally great, and then the next quarter there's a crash. And some macroeconomic factor comes in to kind of change that equation. Or there's a local factor like in 21 or 22 when we were getting out of the pandemic. We saw the startups really spending a lot of money and we saw a big boom in terms of advertising spends. But 23, in that sense, has been one of the most stable years from a spends perspective on advertising. We haven't had these huge ups and downs like we have seen in the past 4 years. And I see that trend continuing into 24. We have weathered all those storms that we have faced, and we have kind of reached a stage where 23 probably is the first year we can call as a base year in the past 5 years.
So stability is enough reason for optimism?
Stability ensures that A, it'll lead to an organic growth. B, we're also seeing the stability bringing in new categories into the advertising space. A lot of the startups which were not spending for the past 18 months came back into the advertising landscape again in the festive period of 23. We saw many of them had cleaned up their P&Ls from the frenzy of acquiring customers at any cost to acquiring customers with a profitable manner. I think that trigger has started now where they've come back to spending money to acquire customers profitably, which is a great sign because all of this whole bunch of customers and clients were actually not spending at all. Elections is going to be another boost. Mm-hmm. We have seen how consumers reacted to IPL last year. Whether it was TV, whether it was digital, we had reach increasing across both the mediums. We had some of the highest ratings on TV. We had the highest penetration on digital. And brands have recognized that. In fact, we saw that effect even in the World Cup, where brands invested a lot more than any other World Cup, both on television and on digital. So we see all of these factors, A, stability, which results in better planning. So for past 3 years, brands didn't have an annual plan for a long time. We're seeing annual plans coming back. We're seeing predictability in spends coming back.
And that's a sign that there's
absolutely
cautious optimism for the future?
I would say optimism actually.
Not even caution. Okay, all right. Maps, here's the problem. Marketers are just about getting used to the idea of millennials and Gen X and Gen Y, and you're throwing Gen Alpha at them. If I'm understanding correctly, these are people are currently babies.
Anyone born after 2010, actually.
Let's just say babies, right? Yeah. Marketers need to worry about babies now, Gen Alpha. That's what your report says.
You know, I know we are a little old for this, but you know, the interesting thing is that the oldest of the Gen Alphas are now approaching teenage this year.
Correct.
Right?
And therefore prolific consumers potentially.
Yeah. And what's more interesting is that even when they are 6 or 7, they are influencing purchase of products which are not necessarily targeted to them. You know, they are playing a part in deciding what goes into the household. In fact, I read a survey which said that of Gen Alpha parents saying that by the time they are 8, these kids are technologically more advanced than they are.
In the 90s, this was called pester power marketing, right?
It was. So across all categories, we are seeing them having a say, or at least an influence on the kind of purchase decisions that are happening. So yes, we do have to focus on them.
Okay, and what do marketers need to know about Gen Alpha?
So 2-3 things, right? If the earlier generation displaced pen and paper with screens, this generation is probably displacing the notion of typing as well.
Mhm.
It's all going to be voice. It's going to be, highly interactive in that sense. And therefore, the way they consume content or the way they consume any such messaging is completely different.
Mhm.
So marketers will have to look at a much more interactive, much more gamified and engaged way to get their attention.
Give us 3 pointers maybe. What do marketers need to do while crafting, let's call it Gen Alpha influencer strategy or an influence strategy?
2-3 things, right? Like I mentioned, I think the entire interactivity of the experience is how they are
So
used to getting
gamification,
gamification, interaction, and all of that. Secondly, they are also from a much earlier age exposed to concepts of inclusivity, sustainability, environment, and so on and so forth. And it's an impressionable mind, so they form those impressions. So authenticity of how brands communicate, the kind of people they use, even as influencers, could be very different from what is being used for the millennial.
Okay, and should marketers hire a couple of maybe teenagers in their team just to see for diversity of ideas, perhaps, or
Yes,
or researchers should?
or at least listen to their kids more, I guess.
Ashwin, you've said that 70% of incremental AdEx spend goes to digital in India. Is this on par with global trends, or is India an outlier in this?
It's actually globally 100% of all incremental spends goes to digital. Probably India is the only market anywhere in the globe where all mediums are growing.
Mhm.
If I look at from a global perspective, 79% of all advertising today is on digital,
Mhm.
and 100% of all incremental ad spend is going to digital. So India is an outlier, yes, but in the other sense of still having a reasonable balance between mediums and not being completely skewed onto digital.
And when I read this split, I see radio has 1% of advertising in India. My question to Ashwin is, why don't all radio companies just shut down? Or why don't advertisers say it's 1%? Let's ignore radio altogether. Why does it even exist today?
So you have kind of hit a very sore spot.
I used to work in the radio industry, just in case.
So I spent 12 years in radio. So
So
it's
did I.
the reality is because radio networks have refused to acknowledge measurement is required.
Mhm.
Radio networks have refused to adopt technology. And I think they're also hobbled by regulation.
Mhm.
Probably it's the most regulated media in our country, with the licensing being extremely strict. And with the advent of streaming and more consumption of music and podcasts on streaming, terrestrial radio is actually getting irrelevant in large markets.
Mhm.
But we are seeing terrestrial radio still flourish in smaller markets.
Mhm.
So really, is there a place for radio in the mix of advertising? Yes. If you go into a Banaras today and listen to a radio net station there,
Mhm.
you will realize that even today in Banaras, a radio station runs 18 minutes of advertising because it still has consumers on radio. And brands which want to target those audiences are continuing to
But is
spend
the
on
clock
that.
ticking for them, even in Banaras?
The clock is surely ticking because as digital continues to penetrate and mobile obviously is ubiquitous, right?
I imagine.
So it is ticking there. So in that sense, yes, it is becoming irrelevant.
Ashwin, the report also says that retail and SMEs will continue to fuel the growth of digital AdEx. That's surprising. One would imagine the big startups, the big FMCGs, the big manufacturers would drive the growth of digital. Can you explain this trend to me, retail and SMEs in particular?
So I think you have to read it as retail media.
Okay.
And so retail media is from a media lens perspective. And when we say retail media, we talk about all commerce platforms. And SME as a client category.
Mhm.
If you look at digital growth, and it's something that we were discussing earlier, we are adding about 14,800 odd crores from in 24. That's our estimate over 23. We added a similar number in 23 over 22. And if you look at how much incremental money TV has added, it's in the range of 2,500 to 3,000 crores. We are estimating about 3,000 crores in 24 will get added on TV. Digital is adding about 10,000 odd crores. Of this 10,000 crores, where is digital's growth coming from? It is coming from the investment that's going into retail media platforms. So whether it's an Amazon, whether it's a Flipkart or a Big Basket or a Nykaa, this growth is at a 41% CAGR from 2019 to going into 24. This is what is powering that incremental growth of digital today, right? If you look at SMEs, digital enabled lakhs of advertisers to come on to the mainstream advertising media, which is not the case earlier. There was no opportunity for a lot of advertisers, small businesses to really advertise. Digital enabled that. And they continue to grow their spends, and new brands and new businesses continue to get added into the digital ecosystem. So they are, as a client category, customer category, they are powering the incremental AdEx again on digital. So between these two, large advertisers investing more on retail media, because that's where, to answer your question, FMCG is investing on digital, but it's investing a lot more on retail media because it drives accountability into sales. It's becoming a sales channel, right? So they're investing more there. The SMEs are investing again on retail media as well as on regular branding because there is ROI visible for them from the spends that they're doing. So that's how the digital AdEx is really evolving as we are looking ahead.
Any concern that regulation might play spoilsport in this? Let me give you an example. If I search for food on Swiggy and I get a promoted restaurant or an ad restaurant, do you think the government one day is going to say either you can advertise or you can be an aggregator, but you cannot be both?
Not really. I don't see that. There will be questions on how data is used. And we have a data regulation bill, which has anyway been under discussion for some time. Those questions that are being asked about what is ethical are the right questions to ask. And I think we saw this play out in the way influencers are used by brands.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? There was an expectation about 2 years back that all influencers state if it's a sponsored communication that they are creating on behalf of a brand. And there were fears that by stating it's sponsored, will consumers stop interacting with that content that the influencer is creating? But not really. Because we have to understand that a consumer or the audience that the influencer has, for example, are consuming that content because they like the content the influencer creates. And as long as the influencer is continuing to create content which is in the space that they're used to creating content, even if it's for a brand, consumers will come to them. Similarly, if I look at a search result, if I state that this is a sponsored search result and this is an organic search result, I think you are laying it out in the open that this is advertising which is putting these results on the top. And it is fair disclosure to a consumer.
To a consumer that this is advertising.
And I think that's the right thing to do.
And do you think ONDC will spoil the party for these guys?
It's still an evolving landscape as far as ONDC is concerned. There's a lot of promise, but at the same time, adoption has been limited.
Is limited. Fits and starts.
So I think we need to see how it really pans out.
Maps, continuing on this theme of data and ethics, you introduced a term called zero-party data. It's been doing the rounds for a little while now. For those people who have never heard the term before, what is zero-party data?
Sure. So it's a very simple concept. It is basically any information or data provided willingly by a consumer of their own volition. And typically it is in exchange for some sort of value.
Convenience,
right?
perhaps.
Something.
Like
and it's been there, I think, since marketing started, right? There's always been people who are willing to fill out a form to get something and all that. In fact, the term is 5 years old, zero-party data as a term. But I think why we brought it in this year and why we are emphasizing on it is that in 2024, as consent becomes much more important, and the cookie deprecation is imminent imminent, and definitely, we've seen the initial stages,
world, so to speak.
So therefore, this is going to become perhaps the single largest source of insight into consumer behavior, what they are consuming in terms of products, in terms of media, so on and so forth. And we believe actually that this could impact not just media planning and advertising, but things even like new product development, because this is straight from the consumer's mouth. It's willingly consented information which they are giving us.
Perhaps we see two trends. One is a set of consumers who are willingly going to give their information and say, in exchange for convenience, I want this. Another smaller set, as we've seen in Europe with the GDPR rules, is the forget me. I want the right to be forgotten by you. right? You're going to force the brand or the tech platform to say, do not remember me.
Right.
Is this going to be a contentious issue for marketers, for small but vocal consumers saying, forget me?
No, I think, see, the concept, whether you call it ad blocking or forget me or whichever way you look at it, is definitely going to happen, right? And marketers have to find their strategy to counter that by being less addy, if I can call it that, right? And how do I integrate in meaningful contexts and meaningful content that is of relevance to them? And most importantly, what's the value exchange I'm providing? As long as they see a value in having that communication sent to them, they're willing to
So that's going
consent
to be
to
a
it.
challenge for marketers,
Correct.
building greater and greater value and contextual relevance in
Contextual relevance, and not just bombarding
not just
ads.
17 pop-ups when I sign up for a new service.
Absolutely.
Okay, next question is for both of you, and the report says linear TV is at the point of inflection and needs to be enabled with a rapid deployment of technology to stay relevant. Now, if I talk to the digital guys, they're bullish, saying digital is the future. When I talk to broadcasters and DTH platforms, they're saying, okay, please, bet job, please. TV is doing fine and dandy, we are growing, we are making money. So can you explain this to me? How can both these things be true?
Like I said, India is the only market where all the mediums are growing, right? So if we are projecting digital to grow at 13% in 24, we're also saying TV will grow at 7%. So the reality is, yes, TV is growing. But
And by TV here, just to clarify, you mean linear TV?
I mean linear TV through cable and satellite, right? But what is the reality of how TV is getting distributed? TV is getting now distributed through internet as well,
Correct.
and we are watching it on CTVs.
Correct.
Broadcast TV extensions into digital is also another 5,000 crore market. And if I add that to the 45,000 odd crores of linear cable and satellite driven TV, we're talking about 50,000 crore plus kind of a TV market.
Yeah.
So how you look at TV is one perspective. Because it is getting distributed in a certain manner, that content doesn't mean it stops being TV, is one perspective. The second is, we do believe that the digital growth, and we spoke about this earlier, is being driven by a large number of SME advertisers for whom the entry barrier has been dramatically reduced to be able to be present in the advertising landscape. TV has to do the same, and which is where the technology part comes in. So, in fact, I think MAP spoke about and Atik spoke about how there were some pilots last year with Tata Play and Disney trying to bring addressability to cable and satellite. The moment that addressability becomes available in a scale, you will have more advertisers participating in TV. So, I don't see TV dying out. I see there's an opportunity for TV, but the caveat is you have to invest behind technology, like digital invested behind technology to where it is.
So what do brands need to do differently for a CTV strategy?
I think the evolution of what kind of consumers I can find on CTV is so rapid. I think we spoke, Maps, about how the number of consumers that we have tracked in markets like UP, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Haryana, Delhi NCR, we have seen a 4.5 times increase in the number of impressions coming from these markets in 2023 alone. We have also seen the growth of fast channels, which is the equivalent of free-to-air channels, linear channels on CTV, which has brought in more consumers and audiences onto CTV. 2 years back, if you had asked, I would say CTV is a great place to find all those audiences you can't find on linear TV, the premium audiences who have been cord cutters. I won't say that anymore, because CTV is also becoming mass now. So from a planning perspective, total TV becomes the perspective.
And what kind of screen counts as a TV? Because traditional image of a TV is a family sitting around.
So we still talk about traditional TV as
right? We're still talking about that device is still the same.
Yeah, it's just that it's connected to the internet now.
Correct.
Versus being connected to a cable set-top box or the satellite.
It's not a group of people on their phones watching TV on a phone, consuming it.
No.
And I think just to add to what Ashwin is saying, is the availability of data now at a very small geotile level, not even a pin code level, further than that, right? In areas like what's the affluence of this particular region or territory? What is the kind of composition of audiences? That's where CTV really comes in. So I can technically have a different ad playing, in one part of Bandra and a different ad playing in another part of Bandra on CTV.
And that helps, for instance, an SME advertiser to micro-target or micro-market if they want.
So the choice is up to the marketer. How granular do you want to get? Do I have a different
Or
promotion
conversely, do you
strategy?
want to spray and pray
Yeah,
and use the cricket match approach too?
It gives you
Absolutely.
both.
Reaching
It
as
gives
much
you
as
the
possible.
option to do both.
Okay, I can't end this interview without a question on AI. Ashwin, first part of the question to you rather, AI strategy for marketers. What should be the cornerstone?
first of all, understand AI is a tool.
And not just Gen AI, by the way. Everybody thinks Gen AI is all of AI.
That's the first
It's
problem.
one kind of AI,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely. It's an evolution of what AI tools are, right? Ask in what parts of my business AI can either build efficiency or help me do things which I today I'm unable to do, or enable me to do things which are in a manner which is a lot more faster and at scale than what I can do today. If I look at from a marketing perspective, clearly in the way we execute campaigns, the way we run campaigns, the way we get inciting out of campaigns, especially on digital, is clearly a place where AI can play a very big role. If I look at consumer inciting, it's a huge opportunity for AI to play a role in terms of consumer inciting and directly plugging it back into the way campaigns can be activated. If I look at creative optimization and the way creative, and this is where Gen AI could come in, is the way, depending upon the consumers I am currently reaching, how can I on the fly create communication which reaches those consumers? Gen AI can come in. So really look at those tasks as business tasks and ask, do I have an AI tool or can I build an AI tool which fits these? I think that's all you need to do. So it's a very simple exercise in my mind.
To add to what he's saying, he spoke about media and messaging and content. I think measurement
Absolutely.
can be absolutely transformed with the use of AI
Okay.
and made much more meaningful. I mean, business
So
intelligence.
that's a classic case for technology to understand large pieces of data and to
Absolutely,
insight.
absolutely.
Okay, final question to you, Maps. In what way should you not use AI? Should marketers not use AI?
First is, I think, don't treat it as a shiny
new
toy.
toy?
Yeah,
Okay.
because there have been enough shiny new toys which have come and gone. I think, like he said, we are looking at AI as something that fundamentally can improve what is being done, what is being done today in a way that you cannot do in a manual manner. So go from business objective out and use AI for that. Don't use AI just for.
Don't be a solution looking for a problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right,
that way.
Ashwin and Maps, on that note, thank you for talking to us.
Thank you so
and,
much. Thank you,
so much.
Suresh.
Thank you. It was lovely.
And with that, it's a wrap on this episode. You can follow Melt on social media. The handle is Ready to Melt, or simply log on to readytomelt.com. If you'd like to follow me, I'm @Suvenk on X. Thanks for watching and see you next week. Goodbye.